Ra-ta-ta-ta. 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 Hello. Hello. Oh my goodness. Hello. Hello. Oh my goodness. That's enough of that. As you know, I love my little media. Hello. Hello everyone. Hello, hello, hello. It is me. It is I. It is Lou, back here with another episode of Just Me. I like to think I'm interesting. The podcast where we just talk, where I just talk, blah blah blah. So last time I never really like keep track of like the frequency of these episodes. Really, it's really it's really terrible. But you know, what are you gonna do? But I thought I wanted to do another episode, just me, just because I've been thinking a lot about things recently. I've been saying for a while that I want to do an episode on my identity, on my gender, on transness, and what it means to me. And I don't know, it's such a weird thing because it's so political right now. And the thing is, like, to me, my identity was never political. So if you are just tuning in, or you don't know, or you aren't my people who listen to this anyway, I identify as transgender and non-binary. And basically what that means is just that when I was told that I was something when I was born, I don't feel like I fit with that. And I really don't know how to explain it other than just for it to be truth. It's so weird because like I feel like people's biggest problems with people who are trans are because they think it's something infringing on their life, so, and that they have to, know why something is happening or relate to it, And to me, I'm just sort of like, whenever I talk to people about it, I'm like, I really don't need you to relate it all to me. I really don't. All I need is just like shared humanity. I don't know. I really don't know how to convince people that I'm not crazy. A lot of times, like, it's been hard in the past to convince myself that I'm not crazy. So in America right now, where I live, I can say that I'm from the US. Obviously this is a very topical time. The trans issue, apparently it's an issue, is like a very like topical issue. And, I'm feeling really good today, so I feel like talking about it. But the thing is, like, I'm not going to talk about it in like a nihilistic, like upset way. I feel like today talking about it because it's so weird. It's so weird. I have so much gratitude around it. Now, hold on. I'm not grateful about people getting hurt and hard things happening. It's just making me realize how grateful I am for what I have. I have a loving, loving, loving family and wonderful friends and a great community. And many people who are like me do not have that. But also, if you look at it in the reverse, a lot of people who are not like me don't have that. They don't have the relationship with my siblings that I have. They don't have the relationship with their parents that I have. And I don't know, something, about that. Like, something that I've seen a lot on the internet. Because, I really like to understand, why people are so hateful. So this is the trans episode. Hello. I know I said I would come out with this for a while, so let's talk about it. So I have done a lot of research over the years because I've never really understood why people, other than just like, this is different from something I know, this makes me feel uncomfortable, why people are so upset about people being trans. And, I've seen all the arguments, whenever somebody posts something positive, I've tried to look through, okay, what do people say that's negative about this? What would I do this thing, and I don't know if this is a me thing or an autistic thing, but I've also heard it's an autistic trait, but whatever, I don't care, whatever. I like to practice conversations of what I would say to certain people in my head if somebody were to be mean to me in that way. And, to put it in short, if somebody were to be transphobic to me, I think a lot about what I would say. And what I would say a lot of the times, so like one of the arguments that I've seen is that like people you're on meds and you're sad all the time. And I'm like, I don't know, man. I am on meds, but I'm not sad all the time anymore. I don't know. I'm not doing anything. I'm not doing anything bad. It's just so sad how many people are going to miss out on really kind and just great friendships, no matter if they're trans or not. You know, I mean, if you heard on the last podcast, like I think people just, and how I only have like one trans friend, and that's not because of, you know, my biases in any way. It's literally just because like that's how the cookie crumbled, and that's who I ended up spending my time with. What I'm trying to say is that like I think that people just, you know, happen to be friends with people, and a good friend isn't based on what you identify as. A good friend is if you're a good friend, and people that you happen to meet and happen to be in your circle and you happen to connect with. Like, it's, I don't know. And just like, I think a lot about the people who maybe meet these people in their circles and meet, you know, trans people in their circles and don't know about them. And, you know, when they find out they're trans, they assume rude and mean things about them, when it's like, you're missing out on a new friend. You know, what if that person, aside from just being who they are, likes the same things you do, you know, is the same. I don't know. It's just, to me, it just makes me sad, because it's a missed opportunity for so many people to be friends with each other. And I know that's like a very naive thing to say sometimes, especially in this day and age, you know, where people are upset all the time, and not upset all the time. What am I trying to say? Where people are, you know, I don't know, pressed about what other people are doing all the time. And it's just, to me, like, I don't find my personhood to be political. I think maybe I should have somebody question me about this and ask their questions, because like, I genuinely don't know what it is that would like make people, you know, upset about me. Like, I genuinely, I don't know. And I don't know, that troubles me sometimes, but like, I think, I don't know, so if you followed the pod up to this point, you know that like I started this, you know, really like talking a lot about depression and about burnout and about all these things, and I've come to a point where I'm like no longer in that place. And it's very weird, because there's so many of my people, other trans people in the world, who are in those places. And there are plenty of people who, you know, are all kinds of identity in that place, because like, life is hard, and social media, how dare, but like, you know, everybody's always talking about the worst thing that's possibly happening and how you should be paying attention to it, and why isn't anybody talking about this, and, you know, and you have to be, you know, invested in it all of the time, and doing things about it all of the time. And I find it so interesting. I just really like, I don't know why I thought this was a good topic to talk about, because it makes me so introspective, and so like, you know, like I think in on myself, and it's hard for the thoughts to come out sometimes, because, you know, for me, you know, when I found out I was transgender, it was such a personal, I think, and I personally think that being transgender, by the way, and being non-binary is the least interesting thing about me. I don't think that I know that it's pretty interesting, but I think that, you know, what I'm saying is that I'm a really interesting person, hence this podcast. But like, and I hope those of you who've come on the journey, you know, believe that too, because I certainly do. I'm pretty damn impressed with myself, I'll be honest, with the stuff I've been able to do, and you know, the stuff I've been able to put out. And please go watch Jude and Julia, because I'm really proud of it. And yeah, more stuff in the works here. I'm so happy that I'm just back and making things, and, you know, not worrying about it. I used to be really obsessed with this topic, I think, for a long time, while I was figuring myself out, you know, my own self-actualization here. And I guess everybody can be, you know, obsessed with their own self-actualization. I don't know. I think everybody should be. I think that self-actualization is like, whatever that means. I'll be really honest with you. I first heard that term like, but when Bo Burnham used it for Inside. So I think that's what it means, is self-actualization is figuring out who you are. I'll have to look that up, but I don't want to right now. But anyway, it's like, I think that everybody should be as introspective as trans people have to be. As a trans person, like, I think you have to be really introspective, you know, and find out and think about really who you are, because of the discomfort that comes up, and what's called dysphoria, if anybody doesn't know. Dysphoria is basically like, or gender dysphoria, I would say, is like when you're feeling like, ugh, about your gender and about how you're. It could be social. It could be how people treat you. It could be how you look. It could be, you know, how you feel in your current life. Like it's all kinds of things. I know there's like probably technical definitions, but that's just the way that I've experienced it and the way that, what is language if not the way that human beings interpret their own lives and how they describe what happens, right? So, like colloquially, a word can mean something different than if somebody looked at the actual definition of something. So, and to me, that is what gender dysphoria means. I really can't describe it to anybody who hasn't experienced it, but it's like, okay, let me think of this. It's like if somebody looked at you, like if anybody's ever had like short hair or long hair and you've been just like hanging out and somebody like called you like something that you weren't, it would probably make you upset, right? If somebody just like went up to you and called, like, like I really don't, like there's so much normalcy in and comfort in picking whether you're a man or a woman, and being told that when you're born that your genitals match up. And the thing is, sometimes, man, I wish it was like that. It would be so great for me if it was like that. But it simply isn't, and it hasn't been for thousands and thousands of years since the dawn of humanity. Like, it's just, like, there wouldn't be so many of us. Like, there would be, like, two, There wouldn't be so many of us if this wasn't, like, a real thing. Also, like, intersex people, not even, like, there's also, sexual diversity. What am I talking about? Like, like whether you got your parts, your genitals, right? There's also genital diversity, and it's just like, I don't know, man. It would be so easy if we could all fit into boxes, but I guess like that's the same, right, with everything, right? Because there's always gray in this world. Like we can't put everything to boxes, like race. There aren't really black people and white people. There are all kinds of people, like, that look different and come from different backgrounds, but we categorize them this way so that we can, I don't know, determine things about people. It's just like, I don't know. To me, I'm just like, we're all people, but also we all, in the same way, like culturally have our own biases and things like that. So it's very naive of me to just like be like, we're all people. I don't see that. Because like, our differences do like cause differences in our lives, so we need to view differences, not be like, I don't see differences, because there are differences, and I think differences need to be appreciated. And with the difference of appreciation, like the way that we appreciate it is by being like, your experience matters, but it doesn't like change that you're human. So like, like we can't, like boxes are so weird. And these are just my thoughts, I guess. But, take what you want from them. But like, when there are just so many types of things that a person can be, like you're like, when someone is happy, right? You're not only happy, like maybe you're happy for a moment, but you're always a mix of emotions. Nobody's ever one emotion at one time. Like, imagine a memory, right? Like, if you had a birthday party when you were a kid and you're sitting there, and depending on who you are, right, like, you're really happy. Maybe you're really happy that your friends are there, right? But, maybe there's somebody else who maybe you feel weird about being watched, while everybody watches you blow out the candle, or maybe you're happy and you're excited for what's coming next, like, or maybe you're happy and you're joyful, but you're never just like one just like static thing, and you're never having just one static thought either. Like, you are an amalgamation of so many different states of being. And it sounds so woo-woo, but it's also like, if you really think about it, like, it's really cool. And what does this have to do with gender? Well, to me, it's like, it's like in the same way that that you like having short hair or long hair, right? Or that you like looking a certain way, to me, that's part of gender. Like, well, it's actually has a scientific name. It's called gender expression. And so to me, like when people ask me, what does it, I don't know. I've had somebody in an Uber. It was really, really annoying. Somebody in an Uber like asked me, why do you think you're non-binary? And I'm like, I don't know, man. Like, I don't really know how to answer that. It's just kind of like, I did a lot of research and everything felt wrong until this felt right. And now I'm super happy. Like, guys, it's so weird. I'm so happy. That sounds so weird. But again, I'm not just one station, like this one thing all the time, right? Like, I would say that other people's definition of happy, I think that I am. I feel sad sometimes. I feel weird sometimes. But, ultimately, my baseline when I truly look into myself is contentedness and often happiness and gratitude. Took a lot of work, by the way, just saying. Took a lot of work, just saying. But, like, I am more than that, Like, sometimes I feel worried about things, feel nervous about things, feel anxious about things, but I'm still baseline happy. I don't know if that makes sense, but what my point is that people are so many things. People are so much. Like, people do so much in their lifetime, like there's nothing simplistic about being alive, and that's beautiful, and that's what it's a waste, if people don't, take advantage of that and really think about who they are as people, I It's also interesting to me that another argument that I saw come up, in my travels around the internet to see how transphobic people think, another argument that would come up is, that trans people are like self-centered and narcissistic or something like that. Like they pay so much attention to themselves, and I'm like, that's so interesting to me, because like some people are like, people's responses have been like, no, they're not narcissistic, like they're so brave and all these things. But I think the antithesis of narcissism or selfishness or focusing inward instead of outward, right? The antithesis of that is not brave, is not all these things. I mean, they are all of these things, because it is really hard to like look in yourself and like self-actualize and be like, who am I really, and how do I do that, But I think the opposite of the antithesis, as I've been saying antithesis wrong, the antithesis of trans people being narcissistic, which is more of the truth, more true than them being narcissistic, is that they're brave enough to like not brave, but like they said brave, but that they're able to look inward, Like, I feel like so many people have really hard lives and stay in those really hard lives and don't make an effort to like feel better or do better. And not everybody has the resources to do that, but it's also like sometimes people who can't feel better about themselves feel the need to make others feel bad. And, that happens all the time, right? I mean, bullies, that happens all the time. If you've ever been bullied before, that's that person really being unhappy with themselves and needing to take it out on someone else, right? That's, everybody knows. I have a feeling that everybody's dealt with something like that before. And if you've never been bullied, congratulations. That's insane. I don't know how you manage that. I feel like only cool people were bullied, in my opinion. But also these are just my thoughts and my feelings about it. The point that people seem to make on the internet is, the selfishness. And I'm like, maybe I'm just like, you should be a little more selfish then. I think we all should be that quote unquote selfish, because I think we all deserve to know ourselves, to really know who we are on the inside. Because it's like, I don't know. And then all these arguments about like how, trans people are like a terrorist organization, silly stuff like that. Whether it is you quote unquote believe in trans people or not, like they're the tooth fairy, right? Or they're like, Santa Claus, right? Whether you believe that they are real, even though people are like were real. I really don't know how else to explain this to you. You know, even though people are, even if you don't, right? It's like you can't really argue that being that in itself makes you violent. I mean, unless there were the shooters, right? There were like 4 trans shooters in the last like 6,000 shootings. So I'm just kind of, and I would say that's neither here nor there about this particular topic, but shootings are awful, and it's a very complex topic. I personally think that the guns are the problem. There needs to be a lot more regulation around them. We've been all saying this for years and years and years, and it's the guns. Whatever. Not the point. But I'm just saying that, like, even if you were like, they're faking it, what about that is violent? Like, I think I can maybe see why people would be afraid of, like, the child indoctrination, because when you teach something, when there's something that you didn't learn when you were in school, and then, that thing that you later learned, you learned in a sexual context, right? You learned about gay people because you learned about the sex part first. At least I did, because there's really no literature talking about it, or at least when you're a kid, there's not a lot of discoverable things that show it as just like, oh, this is just like a man and a woman kissing in a fairy tale, right? This is just that. It's nothing else. Like, we don't have to know that it's sex, right? We don't have to know about sex if we don't want, because we've been hearing about crushes, we've been hearing about love, like our whole lives, right? Any fairy tale, Cinderella, right? Like that's like Sleeping Beauty, like Snow White. All of these are like showing us that, like, people can fall in love and have relationships and have babies. Like, we understand the concept of babies before we understand the concept of sex. And, there's all sorts of schools of thought on whether that's a good or a bad thing, or, how early someone should know sex. Like, I don't care about that. I think definitely a huge reason why people are so threatened when kids are trans, or when the concept of being trans is broached around children, is that they see it like they see gay people, because they only learned about gay people in the context of sex and, non-straight culture, or like non-quote unquote normal culture, like LGBTQ plus culture, when they learned it in an adult context, in a sexual context. And to be fair, a lot of the media that was coming around the time where people were learning about that, I'm talking about like adults, like people in their 60s or in their 40s or in their, like older than me, right? I'm 26. So like I'm not entirely young, I'm not entirely old, but I would say that, like, the people who grew up with different things, and, that's not even to mention the evangelicals and all the people being convinced of things because of religion. I'm just talking about the people who, see this and are afraid for their children, right? And I worked in childcare. I totally understand, the fears that people have about children. I have fears about children. Like, I definitely want some of my own someday, and I'll be a damn good parent, I'll tell you what. So I'm really excited, actually, to have kids. And I know that, like, everyone's like, oh, our generation is not going to be able to afford kids. Like, whatever, I don't care. I'm gonna figure it out. I'm a never say never individual, okay? I'm a never say never. I want kids, and it sounds really great, and I'm going to be a great parent. I'm not ready yet in the slightest, but I'm really excited for that possibility. And hopefully eventuality. Anyway, what I'm saying is that, like, I understand, like, I think the reason that a lot of people, initially go into the topic being afraid, of children getting exposed to it, quote unquote, whatever, like, and not understanding, how surgeries work, not understanding how childhood surgeries work, and about, like, how, a lot of kids get, like, gender affirming surgery, not even in a trans way, just in like a to help them along their growth. Like, people go on like puberty blockers have been like a thing for like a long time, because some kids have like stunted growth and things like that. Some people go on like a growth steroid. Like, it's a whole thing. Like, people, like, this is medicine that's been around for a long time, and we've been helping people through, stunted growth, all kinds of things for a long time. And, these things have been proven to work. But, that's a whole thing on, like, that's also probably a commentary on people's distrust in the medical system in America. And that's also, like, probably a thing about the, like the unaffordability of the healthcare system in America, and about like how frustrated people are with that, hence Luigi, all this stuff. And I know that that's probably why people find transness, being transgender, as a political issue, because, unfortunately, it's not about the self-actualization. It's not about actually being trans. It's about, all the connections that are made to it. I think it's also about just like the way that it's portrayed, and the sexuality portion of it, just because, I think that, people don't like kids knowing about things because they feel they would make the wrong decisions. And you know what? Like, I think that's totally fair about a lot of things. I look back on a lot of my high school years, and, I was treated, less like a kid, because when you're a high schooler, people treat you less like a kid. And even in college, right? But like, I feel like some educators don't understand the power they have over children, and the power imbalance that comes with that. And, some people will take advantage of that, and some people don't know the boundaries. And, as a kid, you don't know your boundaries. And I'm not saying that, like, I guess maybe I'm not saying that, information should be withheld from children, but I think that what's hard is that, like, maybe I'm actually arguing the opposite, that because children are so ill-equipped to deal with adults who won't respect that they're kids, right? Who won't respect that they are, that they're children, who don't know how to respect that they're children, because they don't understand that there's a huge difference, and they're still figuring out who they are and their lives, which is why grooming is bad. So, like, kids are, even when you feel like you're an adult when you're a kid, right? You're not an adult, and sometimes you'll act like you're an adult and act like a peer to other adults, and sometimes adults don't understand that there needs to be a clear boundary so that that kid can live places healthily. Otherwise, they won't be able to establish their own boundaries. So here's an example. I had a teacher, who used a lot of favoritism, and I didn't really realize that because I was a favorite, right? And, really hurt a lot of my friends' self-esteem. And I really didn't think much of it until much later. And I was like, well, that was actually really awful. And then I went back to that school and spoke with that person, and that person was doing the exact same thing to so many other students. And I'm like, you're a grown adult. You're speaking this way to kids. You're making them feel bad about themselves. I think I spoke about this in another podcast, but like, people, like, I don't understand why educators, especially art educators, will tell kids that they won't make it, quote unquote, that they're not good enough. I'm like, I said this before, but how do you know? How, like the more that I'm an adult, the more that I've grown, and the more that I've discovered that, like, that you really can do anything if you want to work at it. And I know that sounds so hooey, but it's also just like, it takes time and concerted effort to do anything that you want to do in this life. Nothing is given to you. Nothing is handed to you. As much as they'll say things like, it'll be easier for some people, but nothing is easy. No one's life is easy. Everybody has struggles. As much as we want to, like, go, oh, these people are privileged and they've never had problems in their life. Like, there are people who have had problems. Everybody's been sad. Everybody's done things. Everybody's, like, we're all in the same boat. I mean, like, we can be mad at people for taking more than their share, billionaires, right? But like we can't keep forcing this narrative of, like, you don't get to be upset about things that you struggle with. In my mind, like, you have to be mindful about other people's struggles, but like, anyway, and acknowledge theirs, and not like prioritize yours over them if, like, you're some specific thing is easier for you. But the idea that, like, there's one group of people that everything is easier for, I think isolates those people further. Anyway, that's a whole other conversation. But like, I'm dipping into all these because unfortunately, to me, being transgender isn't political, but to the rest of the world it is political, because it connects to so many of these other threads. as I've been connecting before. And I'll be really honest with you, I was making a point just now and I can't remember what it was, and I really feel like it was really cool and amazing, and you guys would have said, oh my god, it's so cool and amazing, they're so smart. But no, maybe I'll come back to that topic. I don't know if it ever comes to my mind ever again. So sorry about that. Another thing about it is the pronoun thing. I think it's not as big a deal as people make it out to be. Like, for me, I think people's qualm with pronouns is that they don't want to make social faux pas, so they're mad at other people for creating a social faux pas that used to not be a social faux pas. Like, the possibility that you could misgender someone, it angers people. And, I used to not really understand why, but, when you meet people and you accidentally misgender them, it's a big, I don't know, I've been in situations where I've misgendered people and I've been so embarrassed, and people hate, the unknown and not, and lack of surety, right? People like to be able to look at someone and be like, oh, she, people like to be able to do that. But the thing is, I think for me, something that people don't understand is that, it's not about you being able to look at someone and being like, here are your pronouns. I feel like people mistake that when they talk about they, them pronouns, or they talk about, other pronouns or people with other pronouns and how, they're going to mess it up. It's they're afraid. I think they're afraid because they're like, well, I'm going to upset you and you're going to yell at me. And I'm just like, no, I'm really not. Because to me, here's the thing. To me, yes, I would love to live in a world where people knew my pronouns the instant they look at me. I would love that, but it's just not true. And the thing is, I've been doing a lot of thinking about this, and I think the reason why it's not true and it won't be true is because I have discovered who I am and what these pronouns mean to me. And though, it would be so much easier if I were, if the way that I looked matched, or being cis, if I was cis, meaning the way that I was perceived to other people was the way that I was, right? If I was, that easily said thing, like a she or he, it would be much easier for people to not have to think about it. But for me, I used to be really confused. I was like, well, why does this feel so good, but I feel like I'm going to be a huge inconvenience to people? Because that's been my biggest thing, is I don't want to be an inconvenience either. I don't want to create another social faux pas for people either. But something that I've been thinking a lot about is that I think it's because, and I work in customer service. Here's something that I learned is that, people misgender me in customer service all the time. I don't care. I'm never going to see them again. I don't know them. And what I realized is that the people that are in my life currently, whether I'm close to them or not, I have figured out who I am enough to show my soul to others. And my pronouns are part of knowing me, are part of being in my world, whether you're a coworker, whether you're somebody I see, whether you're somebody who wants to meet me, whether you're a relative, whether you're anybody, whether you're a new friend. If I am talking to you for more than 2 seconds, I want you to know me. You know what I'm saying? If we're having a conversation and I know I'm going to see you again, I'm going to tell you my pronouns because I want you to know me. And there's something kind of beautiful about that, and that you're knowing something about me that not everybody gets to know, because when you find out somebody is transgender, you suddenly that's backstory, man. That's backstory. You don't get that from looking at someone and assuming them, assuming their life, assuming their, when I tell you my pronouns, here's my life, man. And, and it would be great if people could look at me and be like, here's this thing, and sometimes people will, they me if they don't. And I try to do that, if I feel like they people, if I don't know their pronouns. But it's also at the same time, it's it's kind of cool to have somebody be like, hi, here are my pronouns. And, we mitigate that through pronoun pins and things like that, so we don't have to tell people. But it's just I think maybe I want to get away from it as a social faux pas. I think maybe I'd like it to be more if you want to know me better, and you want to know me, and you want to learn who I am, and you want me to learn who you are, here's something about me that is me. So, when someone purposely misgenders me, which hasn't happened very often, I can't remember if it's happened, or if people like forget or don't put in the effort to remember, I honestly think of it as, poor you. You haven't put in the effort to know me. That's what it is. That's what it is. You don't have to understand me, but I am sharing a part of me, and if you're purposely not respecting it or you're purposely not understanding it, you're not knowing me. You're not really knowing me. And you are knowing me purposely on a surface level. And that's really sad for you, because I'm awesome and really interesting. And so, I think that if we all thought of it like that, that like it's a privilege to know something about someone like that, just like knowing their name, right? When you call someone by their name, it's the most beautiful word in the world to them. People love being called by their names. People love that. It is like, it's the magic word. It's what they tell you for, like socialization or for dating or for all these things. I actually use that as a technique. The most magical and beautiful word to anyone in the universe is their name, because people love to be seen. People love to be acknowledged. It's a universal thing. It's a universal fact, and it's beautiful. And so I think that's definitely something people don't get about trans people, is that, and it's something that, and again, we're not a monolith. We're not a monolith. I'm not speaking for everybody, but it is like, from what I've observed socially and, colloquially and culturally, right? I think that is a big root of it, is that people don't understand that it's about seeing each other. And, when trans people tell you who they are, they're showing you who they are. Like, they're not asking you to believe whatever or feel whatever or feel the same with them. I really can't describe to you what it's like to be me, just like you can't describe to me what it's like to be you. And I think that's probably one of the also hard things about being trans and being around people who don't understand that and who feel like they have to understand it because, like, maybe there's a fear that they might be it or something like that. But it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter, because you don't have to be it. You don't have to be trans. You don't have to use any kind of pronouns. You don't have to whatever. You don't have to do anything. You don't have to like the color red. You know what I'm saying? Like, to me, this is just like a fact about me. And, it's different from the way that I just look or the way that I came out looking, right? It's different. It's a way to show my inner self. And I really don't know how to fully, and something else that I say is that, like, I am not, a man or a woman, and a lot of people don't understand what that means. And to me, what that means is that you don't have to understand what it means, and oftentimes I don't understand what it means. All I know is I heard the word non-binary, and then suddenly I was like, that's it. Because I didn't want to wear the dresses. I didn't want to wear the whatevers. Like, I didn't want to be like, hey man, I didn't want to like be, I have brothers. I didn't want to be my brothers. I didn't want to be, the wonderful women in my life either. I wanted to be me. And so, as hokey and weird as it sounds, my gender is not just is not a third thing. Is not a, here's something else. My gender is me. And to me, nobody will ever have my same gender because nobody will be me. So to me, being non-binary just means not doing the things that other people are doing. And I'm not saying that I'm like special at all for doing that, like, although I believe we all are special in our own ways and it's beautiful and everything. But I'm saying that, a lot of people dress like me, a lot of people act like me, a lot of people use they them pronouns, right? And I just pick those because those are easiest for me and the way that I want to show who I am and express myself. And I thought a lot about this because, aside from all the medical transitioning, like, I'm not somebody who has ever wanted to medically transition. I just socially transitioned, fun fact. So, I don't really have a lot to say about the surgery stuff. And in the end, it's a personal decision, right? It's a really personal decision. Just like being who you are is a personal decision, you know? Like, and again, we're not a monolith. Again, I can't speak on anybody and how anybody feels about that, but it's also just like, I don't know, man. It's if somebody's getting surgery, it's their way of expressing who they are. And if they want to do it on the outside, that's up to them. That's not up to anyone else, you know? If they want to do that on the outside and be that and be who they are, you know, and put it there. And it's not that I'm not necessarily who I am on the outside. I think I very much am who I am on the inside, on the outside. I think I definitely put it out there, but, you know, some people want to do more with that. And who am I to say no to that? Who am I to like be like, nah, you know? I used to think about doing it. But like, it's just, to me, the financial and the, you know, and also just, I thought a lot about, if I personally, just me as Lou, if I were on the way I feel about my own gender, right? If I were on an island, I wouldn't really change anything about myself. Probably if I were on an island though and nobody else were around, I probably would walk around with my shirt off more, because I think that I don't see my chest as like a, so I have boobs, and and they're not big, but it's just like, I don't really think of them as like the womanly thing that, you know, you have to cover with a bra. Like, I don't wear bras. Like, I just kind of think of it as my chest in a very neutral way. And boobs are cool. I like having boobs. Boobs are cool. If I think about it, you know, the reason I the reason I wouldn't do anything surgically, you know, personally, very personally, is because on an island, that's all it would be. And the thing is, like, socially, I would love for boobs for like people to see, for people to not like see my boobs and be like, woman, you know? But, you know, I mean, it's not necessarily in right now. Like, I don't know how we do that. I mean, there are people who will always see it like that, right? But I think that's cool and fascinating. I don't know. Not that people will always see boobs as like a woman thing, but it's also like, isn't it cool that we could see boobs as all these different things, because like what is on people's bodies is inherently their own, and they could see it and themselves as anything they want. I think that's pretty cool. I try to think a lot about what a person who didn't believe in trans people or didn't like trans people or felt some type of way about it or was like, own the libs, or one of those people who was like upset about it, right? I think a lot about what I would say to them. And, you know, I really can't think of a lot because I don't understand them as much as they don't understand me about this pod, about how I feel about it. And, you know, I definitely will talk about this again in the future. Another argument that's made on the internet, the final thing I'll say, is that everybody says trans people are unhappy, and that is why they are being trans. It's a disease, it's a terrible thing, and we should be getting rid of it with, I don't know how, converting people or something like that, right? Or something bad, right? Or something bad for me, right? Maybe not bad for them. Maybe it would make them feel better. I don't know. But it's also like, you know, they should be they should be converted or whatever, even if they're lying or that they are being whatever they're being. It's just like, I am more happy than I've ever been in my life, I think, which is crazy. And I feel such a state of gratitude. And I have so many people that love me in my life and that I love in my life. I can't think of what else I would say to them. I don't know how else to explain that I exist and I'm real and I'm here and there's nothing you can do about it. I'm so sorry that it upsets you so much, I guess I would say, that I'm here. I'm really sorry that you're so unhappy with what's going on with you that you have to think about what's going on with me. I'm sorry that it scares you. I'm sorry that you don't have the information that you need and you don't want to get the information that you need because you're satisfied with your lack of information. I'm sorry about that. I'm assuming that if you are a transphobe, then you elected Donald Trump and you're living in America. So I hope that the higher prices of eggs will convince you that maybe they tricked you. Also, J.K. Rowling, I do think a lot about her, and I'm like, it's so naive of me, but I really hope that she figures something else out to do. I hope she's happier, and I hope she knows that, women are awesome, and I love women, and they should have their own spaces, and, gender equality and gender things should be a larger conversation. I think there are discrepancies, and there are things that should be talked about. And that's so fair that some cis women have become really afraid, of people taking their spots that they feel they have, done a lot to earn, which, like the people in the past have. I will say at the same time, if you're a friend of gay people and you're, that trans people did fight first for LGBTQ rights. So if you're gay and you're a transphobe, like, that's really being disrespectful to the people that created these safe spaces for you. I mean, they threw the stones at Stonewall Riot. Like, that's what happened, man. So I don't, it's just like we're all a community or not, and it makes me sad because it's just like there's so much misinformation and there's so much pain out there, and all I can feel is sorry, and I mean, especially to those people who put themselves in the public eye and, and keep pushing back more and more and more because they think that it's a sign of them doing a good job because the haters are on them, right? I mean, that must be what she thinks. Anyway, I'm not a petty individual. I'm really not. And you think there's a but coming to this, but there isn't. I'm not. And I really hope that if I ever met her, I would love to, talk to her as a human being, I guess, and have her do the same with me. And we wouldn't understand each other probably because, when people are set in their ways. I'd love to hear about her thoughts about, what radical feminism is to her and what other parts of that need to be spoken about because, that fear didn't come from nothing, right? It can't have come from nothing. I don't know. It just makes me curious. I think not enough people are curious about the people they consider enemies. Anyway, that's just my thought. I simply think that if any transphobe met me, they would like me and would think twice about trans people being weird. And I believe that has happened to me before. Now, whether it changed their thoughts on trans people, like, they still liked me. So I don't know. And I suppose if I had a discussion with them, they'd probably be like, say some things. But, like, everybody says things about things they don't understand. I'm sure I've said a lot of things about things I don't understand. And whatever. But I hope and wish for love to prevail in all things. So I hope that if anybody didn't understand about how I feel about gender things and stuff, like, enjoyed and listened. Love to everybody who listened. I'm glad that you are listening. Anyway, thanks for being awesome. I'm gonna sign off, actually. See ya.